Hi everyone, my name is Miss Carrie, baby, and I'm your host tonight. This is Talk is Cheap, none cuts, none censored. And yes, I have a guest. I have Miss Terry Smith here on camera. She is the licensed marriage family therapist that will be hosting with me tonight as well. Terry's story is amazing. We actually met like almost a year ago. In a few of the podcast groups and different mental health um, professional groups, and she's awesome. Amazing at what she's doing, and I'm thankful to have her here. So, hi Terry, welcome to Talk Is Cheap.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi. So you can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Terry Smith, and I am a licensed marriage family therapist based in Atlanta, Georgia. I specialize in child and adolescent therapy, and I also like to coin myself as being a person who, well, basically, I break generational curses and help empower Black women and youth.
Yes, great, Terry. And you see, I got my Atlanta hat on. So shout out to Atlanta, Georgia. So Terry, just how are things going with COVID out there?
Oh man, it's going. I've pretty much been. Well, I have a 2-year-old and she has Down syndrome, so I try to make sure that I keep not only just myself safe, but as well as her. So if I do go out into the community, I make sure that I take extra precautions because I don't want to be what an asymptomatic carrier and then pass it on to my daughter. I don't know how things will affect her. So we gotta just stay low key as much as possible. And if we do leave out, then we try to stay away from people, wear our mask and all that good stuff. But COVID is really crazy because life is very, very different right now.
Yes, totally agree. So, here in Dallas, I know we talked previously about before we got on this tonight about how it is out here as well. But like people have to take this seriously. They have the vaccine that they're promoting for us to get, and hopefully that'll make it mandatory for us mental health professionals yet. But I know a lot of people have had to get it, and it's crazy. So, how do you feel about that? Are you going to get the vaccine?
I am to know zombie. I want to be safe and given the this was something that so I don't want anybody to be safe. I want to
Mm-hmm. Oh man. All right, guys. I apologize. Terry's coming back. Okay, there she goes. The connections. I like that. Okay, sorry. I think the connection kind of shook up. Can you um tell us about how you feel about the vaccine again? I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. I was saying that, for me, being responsible, more so looks like me watching how other people, respond to the vaccine,
Yeah.
because I don't want to turn into anybody's zombie. And when they came out with a vaccine, the first thing that I thought of was The Walking Dead
Mm-hmm.
and how they and how
Yeah.
they went all the way to the CDC in Atlanta to get the vaccine, and basically they were like, well, listen, everybody's going to be a carrier, so
Yes.
that was the first thing that I thought of when I heard about there being a vaccine. And I just, like I said, I just want to be responsible, so that more so looks like me not rushing like everyone else to get the vaccine, but see how it affects other people, because at the end of the day, I don't want to take something and then it causes harm to me, or causes the side effects might cause harm to my daughter. Like that's my biggest concern.
Yes. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And Walking Dead was one of my favorite shows. So I feel like that. So I'm like, do we got to get in like combat
Really?
mode or something? Like, what's going on? And like, they're
Right,
pressing
right.
so hard. Get the vaccine, get the vaccine. And then come to
Yeah.
find out there's different things that have not been tested along with getting this vaccine. So I know
Hmm.
on my job, we also are having where we can take the tests, we can get tested at least once or twice a month, depending on different symptoms that you had, or even if you don't have any and you're just worried, you can get
Yeah.
tested for free, and they pay for it now. And I'm thankful for that. And it's the rapid testing that's through the the bloodstream, and then if they have to do a nasal or mouth swab, then they can. So I'm like, that's
Right.
great. I'm good with that because
Right.
I'm
Right.
still skeptical on getting that vaccine. And like I tell my listeners, like, do your research. Don't just go off of what me and Terry are saying as mental health professionals, but just do
Hmm.
your own research. And like we're saying, promote and keep learn things about this vaccine and keep your family safe. Do what the best thing
Absolutely.
is for you. So
Absolutely.
just tonight, we'll discuss tonight trauma. So there's been different types of trauma and things that are going on and things that you experience in your life that could be hard for you. And that's your own story, anything that triggers you. So that's what we're dealing that's what we're gonna discuss, and that's things that we are dealing with tonight on here is discussing trauma, and having traumatic experiences. So
Yeah.
the factual definition for trauma is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. And that example is just like a personal trauma, like the death of your parents, um, or just something that's happened in your childhood that was triggering for you, or things that you didn't expect to happen. It could be something as being in sports, and a lot of football players get hurt, and something triggering for them where they take a step back could be that they remember that they got hurt, and they don't want to break their leg again or hurt their ankle or anything like that. So that's just
Right.
different traumatic experiences. And then there's different types of trauma. So you have your acute trauma, your chronic trauma, and your complex trauma. So acute trauma is the results from a single stressful or dangerous event. And so with acute, that may just happen one time in your life, but it's still something that's stressful to you that you remember. And going back to that age of being a childhood or when that time had happened. And then your
Hmm.
more chronic traumas is like your child abuse, domestic violence incidents, and things that continue to occur or be stressful in your life that you remember that could happen multiple times throughout your life. And then you have your complex traumas that are also multiple times that you have been traumatized, but the span between the traumatic experiences are a little shorter. Something that may have
Hmm.
happened, like I hate to use this, but like in domestic violence situations, say a woman continues to be in abusive relationships over, she's been with one guy for a year, then she takes a break for about a month, and then she's with another man for 6 months to a year. Then she goes and be with another man for another year. That's also, the repetitiveness of being in an abusive relationship. So that's
Right.
what we're talking about tonight, trauma. So Terry, how do you feel about trauma or traumatic experiences?
Well, the best response that I can give is that, I, as well as a lot of Black people, we experience trauma all the time. Which is
Yes.
one of the reasons why I said that, I like to identify myself as someone who has broken generational curses, or in essence, generational trauma or help. I don't want to say I have on my in my own for my own self, but I also help other Black women do the same thing, because the reality
Yes.
is that, it's hard for us to be able to, um, I like you said, identify what trauma is and how to move forward from it. And
Yes.
so I am extremely familiar with trauma and how it can be impactful, not just to you, but to, other people that are you're around, your entire family system. So yeah, I'm very familiar with trauma and how that plays a part, in how
Yeah.
we function throughout the world.
Yeah, totally agree. A lot of people, and now we discussed previously, like a lot of people are this is something traumatic for them having to even deal with COVID. And I've mentioned
Yeah.
this on a few previous episodes this season that a lot of times with with the things that we're dealing with COVID, a lot of times parents or friends or family members don't understand that a traumatic experience is something personal, that's something
Hmm.
internal in that person that they were exposed to. So we can't decipher that and say, hey, deal with it, or that wasn't that bad, because you don't know how that is, that was hurtful to them, or
Yeah.
they don't want to remember. Nobody wants to have bad memories. So
Hmm.
just thinking about parents with their children, something traumatic for a teenagers could be not being able to just live their daily lives, or going to school, being with
Hmm.
friends, and being around different people, because as we see the numbers, a lot of things have happened during COVID, where even being at home is not safe for some people, because of
Yeah.
those the bad exposures that are at home, or seeing the domestic violence that's going along with parents, and just being around it more and more. So sometimes for a child, going to school is a scapegoat for them to get away from their
Absolutely.
traumatic experience and their exposures. So what are
Absolutely.
some things that you have dealt with dealing with trauma personally?
You know, so I would definitely say that, as a child, my mom, was the best parent that she felt that she knew how to be, but she definitely had her own history of trauma, and that definitely impacted how she parented and how she, showed up as a mother. And so, out of full transparency, I grew up in an abusive home, and I also experienced sexual like a sexual, I don't want to, well, yeah, sexual abuse,
Mm,
from several individuals, one being, well, two of them being a family member, just last year, while COVID was definitely traumatic, for me, and it was extremely new, just like for everyone. I definitely experienced trauma when my daughter passed away. So I was pregnant, had her in February. Actually, she would have been one this coming Saturday. But
mm,
she passed away from SIDS at 1 month old. So that, well, sorry, 2 month old. She was 2 months old. So that was extremely traumatic. Um, Another trauma was my 2-year-old daughter
mm,
going on 22. When I was 19 months pregnant with her, I ended up finding out that she had Down syndrome, and I
mm,
had never experienced anyone who had Down syndrome before. And so, of course, as we usually do, the first thing we do is we hop on Google to see
yeah,
what something is. And
mhm,
what's on Google is not conducive. It wasn't conducive to my mental health, on top of the fact that I was
yeah,
pregnant and had all these other things going on in my life at the time. So that was extremely traumatic. And but I always
mhm,
say that that was the best decision ever. But I will definitely say that one way for you to overcome trauma is to
yeah,
I'm a narrative based therapist, and so one thing that I have said that definitely helps with overcoming trauma is identifying the what you have, what is the story that you have
yes,
constructed around that traumatic event. And
okay,
then once you've identified what it is, what has that how can you shift or deconstruct this narrative? So typically what ends up happening is, like, I could sit here and say, oh my gosh, my daughter that died, it was the worst thing ever. On top of the fact that there's COVID, life is just not the same. And, then I was abused and beat, as a child. And then, I experienced a lot of failures in my life as an adult, and I can be super depressed. But and this is the narrative that I've constructed about my life. But then how do you deconstruct that? Well, what meaning have you made out of that situation? Especially when it comes to my daughter that passed away. Her name is Lyric.
mhm,
um with Lyric, even though it was, a very short experience, that was one of the best experiences that I ever had with her. My experience with her meant everything to me because I was able to work through childhood trauma. I
mhm,
will always say that, it was disappointing to have a daughter. And, the moment that I saw her, I didn't fall in love with her. I actually didn't like her because she looked exactly like me,
Yeah.
and that was like, okay, something is really wrong with you, for you to have a daughter and you don't even like her just because she looks like you. And
Mm,
so it was like, okay, you have to do some work. And in that, I
yeah.
was able to explore how my relationship with my mom really impacted me. The fact that she
Mm,
passed away, because that's the reality too. That was something traumatic too, was that she my mom passed away from breast cancer. And even though we heard the words, hospice and things like that, the reality is we were not prepared for her to die, and so
mhm.
losing a parent is traumatic, but it was
Yeah.
kind of like, what was the meaning that I made, what from that loss, what meaning did I make from my relationship with my mother, and through that I was able to actually, like, heal that relationship, even though my mom wasn't there,
Mhm.
to give me, her insight and things like that. But, just from me exploring with other people, their experience with my mom, and then recognizing that my mom was hurt. And the reality is
Mhm.
that hurt people. I was
Yeah.
able to get into a space of forgiveness. And then once I started to forgive, then I started to explore, how my experience with my mom affected my perception of self,
Yeah.
my self esteem and things like that. And then once I was able to heal past that, then I was able to realize that even though my daughter passed
Mhm.
away, it was such a, I don't even want to say a blessing, but it was such a, something positive that came from that relation, that experience that I had with my daughter. So, it's all about reconstructing, the
Yeah.
narrative that you create around your trauma. And once you realize that there's something better on the other side, you start to actually work towards it.
Yes,
I
and
know that was
also,
a lot.
no, 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 no. That's great, Terry. This is your story, and you tell you tell it how you want. Those are your experiences. I can't change that or decipher. But I do remember I am in a little bit of the when your daughter passed. Our memory was it you met with me on that day over
Yeah.
video call, and I was
Hmm.
like God, she was open, but it was also like she said, it wasn't a blessing, but it was something moving even for me to see this strong black woman like on an interview call with someone she's never met, us talking about positivity. And she was also just moving as well as in telling her experience to say, yeah, I'm not okay, but I'm dealing with it. This is how I'm dealing with it. And no one can take that away from me. And like
Yeah.
it was just it wasn't even a sad conversation for us because I like I said, it was something moving for me to see that she was okay with talking about her traumatic experience. And a lot of mothers or fathers that have lost children, they can take something, from Terry's story to say that not only, it is a sad situation. I'm not telling you to be sad, but just always just look at things in an enlightenment of that. It doesn't have to be a depressing look or a persona that's given off for asking for sympathy. Like Terry never asked me to be sympathetic. She was like, it's okay. God has her. She's okay. She's in a better place now. Like it came from a very moving place of positivity. And just, I commend you for that, just even as a parent. And until this day, I asked you just a minute ago, and it still was great positivity. So
Yeah.
blessings and I do hope that you get a chance to have another daughter and that's amazing as well. And then what you guys share what you're doing, what you did with your daughter's ashes, Willard's
Yeah.
ashes.
So now I do want to put this disclaimer out that usually I'm never this rude. So I do apologize that,
Oh no.
we're actually traveling. But one of the things that I had done was, I took her ash. So once she was in the NICU, because she was actually doing April and she was born, like I said, in February. And so she was born premature, and while she was in the NICU, I had read to her all the places we'll go. Now I'm a Sagittarius, so I love to travel and go places. And so I was
Right.
really adamant about, taking her places and traveling, like while I was pregnant with her. We went on a cruise, and we went to where did we go? We went to St. Kitts, St. Lucia. We went to Barbados. We went to Puerto Rico. So we
Wow.
went traveling, while I was pregnant with her, and so and the 2-year-old, got to experience, and I'm like, how are you only, two, and or at the time she wasn't two yet, but how are you
Yeah.
almost two and you've gone, more places than a lot of kids, ever. But anyway, so the point was that I used to read her all the places will go by Dr. Seuss, and when she passed away, I felt really bummed out that I couldn't, take her places. But I one of the things that I had said when I was pregnant with her was that I wanted to practice being a woman of my word. And so I kind of, took a moment to reflect and think about what that would look like. And so I happened to go on to Build a Bear website, and they had the places you'll go teddy bear.
That's
And I
great.
took some of her ashes and put it inside the bear. And so I
Wow.
created a fund called Oh, the Places Elle Will Go. And so I take Elle,
All right.
different places. So last year, one of the places we went to was Utah. That was pretty cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool to, like, just go places and post it on social media, and just
Mm-hmm.
share lyrics legacy, because she's still, I like to believe that she's still here, just not here in the physical form.
Yes, yes, and that's great. So, dealing with your traumatic experiences, what was your passion or your purpose by becoming a licensed marriage family therapist?
Um, so I actually knew since 10th grade that I wanted to be a therapist. I just didn't, in 10th grade, you're not going to know the difference between a psychiatrist, a therapist, and psychologist, etc. But I knew that I wanted to work with kids just because of what my childhood was.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I was really, at the time, I was really suicidal. And so I just knew that I wanted to be a therapist, so that way I can be the voice and be the help that I never received. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I want to say, after I graduated from, because I attended Clayton State University, and after for my bachelor's degree, and after that, I knew that I wanted to become a therapist, like I said, but it was just kind of during that time that it was kind of like, where will your career go? Like, what kind of therapist do you want to be? Do you want to go to school and, become a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Now, medication and math and all that other stuff, it's beyond me. So I was
Yeah.
like, psychiatrist, nah, psychologist in school for a little too long, which actually ended up being weird, because I am actually starting my dissertation on the first
Yeah.
of next month. So it was kind of like, you should
Wow.
have went to school for, psychology, but I never take away the,
Congratulations too.
becoming.
That's great.
Thank you. I never take away, the fact that marriage and family therapy is always,
Mm.
something that I'm going to be passionate about, just because we're systems based. So, and I think that that's what kind of drew me, is that, what goes on with the individual doesn't just affect the person, it actually
Yeah.
affects the whole system, everyone around them. So that was actually what drew me to, MFT. And
Okay.
I'm extremely grateful for it.
Yes, that's great. So just thinking about like you said with the family, and that that's where the structure comes from of being a part of that family unit that helps
Mhm.
you working with children. What are some things that you advise for couples that may be dealing with like chronic or medical mental health, like mental illnesses?
Right. So, I would definitely advise for, the person who is sick.
Mm-hmm.
I encourage that person to share their experiences with their partner. Because, when I had a conversation earlier about depression looking different for everyone, so sharing what your signs and symptoms are, and then for the other person, the partner, to actually hear it. Don't make an assumption about what you think your partner may be going through. But listening, and also, like, I think that when it comes to mental illness, communication is the biggest thing. If you're not
Yeah.
communicating and listening to each other, it's not going to work. It's only going to make the symptoms worse. It's going to make the problems worse. The person that's sick is going to shut down. They're not going to want to talk.
Yeah.
It's going to cause distress in the relationship, in the family. So I think
Agreed.
that is the biggest thing, is being able to communicate and talk about what the issue is, what the symptoms are, what it looks like, and then
Yeah.
also identifying how that partner can be an individual of support. So being
Exactly.
very detailed on what it is that you need from that partner and how you need them to show up. A great example, I tell my parents that I work with,
Mm.
yes, your child may be, sick or may have this mental illness, but sometimes you just need someone to vent to. So I even open it up for my parents to
Yes.
just call me sometimes and just cuss me out. Now, of course, I don't take it personal,
Yeah.
but I'm like, hey, call, curse me out and get that off your chest, and then we move forward. But
Mm.
so you just really have to explain to your partner what it is that you're looking for, how you need them to show up. Is it just venting? Is it for feedback? Whatever. But communication is extremely important when you are, a couple and you're trying to work through a diagnosis.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you said, communication is key. Like that's the way of the world. Like
Hmm.
they say, closed mouths don't get fed.
Very true.
I don't know what's
Very
going
true.
on. If you're not
Very
telling me,
true.
you can stand there all day. What's going on? What's happening? How you feeling? What's going? And
Hmm.
a lot of times, I love that question and asking you that, and great answer, because a lot of times that is your person. You're around them the most, so they notice the
Hmm.
things. When something is going on, they notice what's going on different. And sometimes I've interviewed a lot of women that said that their spouse or their significant other is the one that brought it to their attention that they weren't themselves, and to say, hey,
Hmm.
I support you, let's go get checked out. So it's a
Yeah.
lot of times where you don't even notice things yourself, but somebody that loves you, that's in tune with you, they're like, hey, you always coming home angry, you ain't used to doing this. Let's
Right.
figure out what's
Right.
going on. And a lot of times that's who you confide in as well, is your
Hmm.
the person, the people you live with.
Yeah.
That
Or
notice.
I was going to say, even on the flip side of that, even just going into the systems of oppression, right? So, a lot of times we might be experiencing something like depression or, sadness or anxiety or whatever the case may be, but because we've always felt oppressed, and being able to articulate what it is that we are feeling, that we don't talk to our partners, and our partners are just kind of like, why aren't you talking to me? What's going on? And if you
Exactly.
don't have a partner that is open, and, like I
Mhm.
always say that I'm really big on black love. Now white love
Yes.
is fine too, but I'm big on black love, and one of the things that I'm really passionate about is being with someone that uplifts you and pulls you through even when you're at your absolute weak, your
Exactly.
weakest.
Yes.
And so that is something that I always say, that your partner should be able to see when you're not yourself, or be open to hearing what it is that you're saying, challenge you to pull whatever it is that you're suppressing on the inside, so that way you can be helped. So I think that that's really big, really
Yes,
big.
that's great. So just thinking about digging deep into more of the marriages and married couples,
Yeah.
um, would you say, oh, sorry, of the couples you treat or that you have, experience, or a coworker has experience, from just the percentage of those couples that come to you with, issues dealing with mental illness, would you say that they are satisfied in their relationship once they find
No.
out that person has a mental illness? Or like, are they
No.
open to it and, it helping them?
No, a lot of times, no.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why is, again, going back to the oppressed piece, the oppression piece, is that, you know, for the couples that I have worked with, when there is a mental illness involved,
Yeah.
the person that isn't well, and I hate to even say sick because that's kind of like giving a label, and I hate giving labels.
Yeah.
But the person that's experiencing distress, I'll use that.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
person that is in distress, they are having a hard time wrapping their mind around the fact that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
And then, and the reality is, by the time they come to therapy for services, it's because
Yeah.
they tired. They tired. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like, fix my relationship, or this is it. You have one person that's willing, and then or one person that's kind of mostly being dragged to therapy, and that's typically the male. He's being dragged to therapy. He doesn't really understand why
Mhm.
we're going to therapy. What is this supposed to do? We either with it or we ain't. We gonna be together or we
Yeah.
ain't. And the satisfaction of the relationship is very low. The woman might be tired and fed up, but she's still trying. And so, again, going back to the whole mental health piece, that when mental health is involved, and we find out most of the time that the woman has anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder, or she's battling with depression, it all stems from childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And so that means that we have to work through childhood trauma and how your partner is going to show up, and how your partner
Mhm.
is going to be a person of support. So, to answer the question, satisfaction in a relationship is low. And, if
Mhm.
the guy is really involved and invested in, the relationship, then he's more than willing, to be open to working past the mental health piece. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's just like, well, I come to therapy like once or twice, and the rest is on you, sis.
Yeah. Yes. Totally agree. Like it's a lot of times that you hear couples talk and think, and that's something that most of us have in common. It's like I love you. You here. You're present. But you're supportive. But do you have the consistency to go on this journey with me and get to that
Yeah.
end result? It's like
Yeah.
a lot of times they're like, okay, what did you come up with? I went with
Right.
you. We did this. I held your hand a little bit. But what happened? Or now that
Absolutely.
they're noticing that you're not discussing anymore, they're like, so did it get fixed? What's going on?
Right.
you know?
Right.
And it's like,
Right.
no, you could have been there with me, going on it, going with me because it just wouldn't help me. It's to help us. It's to help you
Absolutely.
to even understand where I'm coming from. But a lot of times I see, a lot of guys step back and kind of just, like you said, watch from a distance and say, okay, I'm supportive, like a tap on the shoulder. I'm in your corner, but they need to figure out what's wrong with you. Or,
Mhm.
it's like,
Mhm.
no, you're
Mhm.
so young. Us women, we can be emotional. I want the sympathy sometimes too.
Right. Or not even taking in consideration that you contribute to the mental health. I'll tell anyone that for a period of time, in my young adulthood, I battled with depression. And my now husband, like when we first started talking, one of the things, of course, that made the situation worse was my mom passed away.
Mm,
But he moved from New York. See, and that's what I mean by black love. He moved from New York
yes.
to Atlanta to be in a relationship with me.
Sure.
And he when he moved down here, of course, when you're moving from anywhere, you have to find a job and things like that. And so here I am battling with depression, battling with, my mom passing away. And then, it's kind of like, all right, so when you gonna get a job now? You've been here for
Yeah.
2 weeks, and I'm so impatient. I'm
Yeah.
impatient when it comes to certain stuff, So I'm like, all right, and that was one of the things I would definitely say that that is that you gotta be conscious of, um you got to be conscious of the mental health piece and the how you contribute to that person's mental health.
Yes, totally agree. And like people need to, I'm really big on now, I've been speaking it, but just verbally saying, just, unity and speaking that
Mm-hmm.
positivity, not just within yourself. A lot of times, everybody has been selfish. So a lot of
Yeah,
times people are selfish and so caught up in your own thoughts that you can be around somebody and be with them, but you don't even notice things that's going on. And it's like, well, this stuff is to help both of us. You're supposed to be here for, everyone in the, in the family or in the home or your friends, and just be that listening ear sometimes. We don't always need the feedback, or we need that person to go on a journey with us. And even if they want to sit in the room while the therapist and I are talking to get what they need and they don't say anything, that can help as well. Because
that's
some people
true.
just need that, just knowing that they're supportive and being there.
Yeah.
So reverting back to you talked about your childhood experiences and your trauma, and then after this we'll wrap it up. But I just want the people to know, what were some of the resources that you found helpful dealing with your daughter that had Down syndrome?
Mm-hmm.
And then this is kind of a lot, but dealing with the daughter that had Down syndrome, and then you have the daughter that was 2 months that died,
Mm-hmm.
and your own, like you said, your own dealing with depression as well. So kind of combining all those, what were some things that you found helpful during those individual times?
Yeah, so when it comes to my daughter who had Down syndrome, I and looking back on it, I would say that my OB was one of the main reasons why I was able to feel comfortable with my daughter having Down syndrome. She did
Mm-hmm.
provide community resources. She definitely suggested that I go on Facebook and find other Black moms who, or parents who had children with Down syndrome. So that was one thing I'm a part of. I can't remember exactly, but I know it's African American parents of children with Down syndrome. I think I could
All right.
be kind of wrong. But I'm a part of that group. And then there was one that was inclusive, an inclusive Down syndrome group. So they, I was able to ask questions. I think that, I was able to ask the most questions for, the African American parents, because one thing that I have noticed is that Down syndrome for Black kids and other races kind of actually looks different. And the physical symptoms that they experience are somewhat similar, but it's not as severe as other races. So that was one thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
felt safe asking certain questions, versus I remember the first time that I asked a question in the inclusive group, and man, Facebook people can be kind of mean. They can be thugs, internet thugs.
Yeah.
But that was a great resource. Then on top of that, when it comes to my daughter died on a Sunday, and by that Saturday I was in therapy. So
Mm-hmm.
therapy, is I will always push therapy.
Yes.
Besides therapy, just, I had, my husband's family was extremely supportive.
Okay.
My sister came a couple of times, and like made sure that I ate, just sat with me, just watched me
Okay.
breathe sometimes. She helped with my daughter, like did her hair, because I'm not good with hair. Um, my black card is revoked because I can't braid. But just having that
Nonsense.
family there, right? So just having that family, that was extremely
Okay.
important. And if for those who don't have family, create your own system, of support. Create your
Yeah.
own platform. That was one thing that I definitely do. I not only am I a therapist, but I also have a
Yeah.
skincare line. And when I tell you, my they're called they're called the Shaylistas, or my Shay family.
Mm.
And man, when I tell you that they showed up, like they
Okay.
showed up, they made sure, that I was okay. I still had orders and stuff that I had to get in. It was like, take your time, they check in, even to this day, a whole year later, and like when I tell you that I've created a sense of community within my, my clients,
Yeah.
that like that is exactly is it. So using your platform, or using your experiences as an opportunity for you to create your own platform or your own system of support is another thing that you could do as well. Because I know that there's a
Yeah,
lot of people out here who say, I don't have family, or I don't have
yeah,
someone that I can reach out to. I don't have friends, and especially during the pandemic, like right now, even though you can't be there in the physical form, it's extremely easy for you to be able
yeah.
to connect with people, because there's people that are
Mhm.
just like you,
Yeah.
that are experiencing something similar, so you create that platform and just build from there.
And then, like we saying, a lot of virtual things, and that's great. Great answer to that question as well, and sharing your experience and the things that's helping you to help someone else, because a lot of times people do get stuck on where do I go to get help, or where do I need to do, or not getting any at all. It's always really big, especially in our, you
Yeah.
know, in our Black and Brown community.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so funny. I never really liked that term. Then it became
Hmm.
like the term of. I actually became a certified public speaker a
Oh,
few months
wow.
ago. So it yeah, so it became
Congratulations.
that term that I noticed other speakers using, or panelists using, or other podcast hosts and platforms, and it's just not taken away from calling us Black or African Americans, but just expanding it around that you can be, just noticing that these different shades can be of
Yeah.
Black descent or African American descent, and just
Yeah.
not counting anyone out along the line, because they always want to sit up there and put our um, race or our ethnicity and attach it to another ethnicity and say, oh, like they
Yeah.
kind of do our vice president Kamala. Oh, she's a us. We're like, yeah, we got African American woman in there, but then they want to say Asian American. She's Jamaican of descent. Da, 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 it's like,
Hmm.
why are you doing all these things? That lady is Black.
Hmm. Hmm.
But like I say, the Black and Brown communities is always, that saying is always politically correct per se.
Correct. Right.
Just in that
Right.
community, alone, we weren't taught to share our feelings or share what was going on, or even tell
Yeah.
certain things about what has happened to us. Or if you did tell, it was kind of based off of that. You stopped telling because nobody took it seriously, or they didn't say
Yeah.
anything, or they kept it on the hush and just abandoned that person out of the home, or don't come around my kids anymore. If
Yeah.
something happened like that. So I totally agree. And like we're saying, guys, just if anything is going on, we listed a few things here. Just find that person that you can speak with. As Terry said, therapy is great, and it's coming from a therapist that had to get help on her own and counseling on her own as well. And
Hmm.
we're advocates for that, seeking help, and the attention that you need to be a better you, to overcome some things. And there's not a time limit on your healing. No one can tell you what your healing should look like, or how much you should grieve or mourn, anything, because we all know it hurts, but it's about how you are handling and how you can move forward. So you have any last remarks, Terry, to leave the guests with?
Yeah. So I'm gonna give a shameless plug, just because that goes to that goes to what we were talking about tonight when it comes to trauma. I've actually created a subscription box, that is specifically for people that are on the fence, for
Uh-huh.
therapy. So it's actually the healing work, or starting the healing process for overcoming your traumas. And so the subscription box is actually called Heal Her, and it has a journal, each month for 6 months. So it's a 6 month commitment. Each month you receive a journal. There's different tiers, but the most important piece is the journal and the reflection questions that you do. And it
Yeah,
actually helps you start that process of healing and working through a lot of the trauma pieces that you either suppress, or been so shut out as it relates to your your feelings,
Yes.
it's always, oh, I have to be the strong one. And that's one of the things that is, Black women experience, is that we always have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulder, and not be in tune with our emotions. So that's what that box is for.
Yes.
So there's that. But I always say that the main thing is, like you mentioned, just get yourself a therapist. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you at all. Sometimes we just need somebody to talk to, vent to, that is not going to give a bias or judgmental response, and of course we always go to our homegirls or our friends or whatever, for that feedback,
Yes.
but their response is going to be a little bit biased because they're your friend, so I always say get a therapist. There doesn't mean that there's anything wrong, with you, or wrong, with the whole process of just talking to someone. So that's it. That's all. Because I know I can sit here
Yeah,
and talk all day.
yeah. No, no, Terry, you're great, and thank you, for reaching out and collabing with me on this, and
Thank
just being
you.
a part of my platform and supporting me as well, my fellow mental health
Of
professional.
course.
It
Of
was great
course.
having you on here, and thank you, Terry, for being on Talk is Cheap. And I wish you the best, and we'll be in contact as well, just checking in on you. So thank you.
Thank
And
you. Thank you for
also,
having
happy
me.
Black History Month,
Yes. Happy
everybody.
Black
All
History Month.
right, have a good one.
You
Bye bye.
too. Bye.
So, yes, everyone, I had Miss Terry Smith on tonight. Great moving story. Wonderful. She's a marvelous young lady as well. And just telling her experience and giving her opinion and her point of view about traumas and dealing with traumatic experiences, along with don't always think that no one cares or someone's not listening, because there's always somebody out there that's willing to listen, that's willing to be there for you and be that advocate. And it's just about you putting in that time to find that person, or seeking that help, and knowing that you're not alone. And also just leaving you guys with a few things. Look through season 2 has been very moving this year, and I thank God for that as well. And just being able to encourage you guys on things that are going on in not just the world, but relating it to mental health, and being mentally aware, and explaining those. These are real life experiences that people are going through, and knowing that you're not alone, and we can get through this together. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode tonight. Check out some of my previous episodes, as I said. And last week I did a 2 episode thing. One was just discussing relating to different Black History Months, inventions and things that have gone on in the world over time for African Americans. And then also I had my panel discussion, my first ever one. It's called My Own Awareness. I had 3 lovely young ladies on there that are great, and also fellow mental health professionals, and African American author as well. So thank you guys. This is Talk is Cheap, and y'all have a good one. All right, bye.